Yeah. It's strange, like my attitude towards art, social media wise, has changed loads. It feels more like a chore than anything, and sometimes it's nice to share a thought or a piece of work you're generally proud of.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's just kind of like a chore, it's weird. But I think half the things I do art wise is a bit of a chore. Like, I'm not a big fan of working on a website or like applying for shows. I just want to work, I want to pay to work.
Well, that's the art. That's a good sign, I think.
Yeah, definitely. My drive and my, where I want to be is here.
A lot of artists, like Matt at the other studios, he'll have like an admin day apparently.
Yeah.
Some people just take an hour out every week, just.
Yeah, that's what I need to do.
And then they can just like.
I'm trying
concentrate.
I'm trying to find a formula where it's easier for me. Or like the other day I was like, it was quite funny actually. Like I put aside a couple of hours just to sit on the laptop and just look for opportunities or commissions or just trying to brainstorm ideas and stuff. And I quickly found my mind kind of drifting and getting bored. So I did a bit of a social experiment and I got stoned, and it actually worked. Because I kind of got tunnel vision, I kind of went into what I was doing, and as I was doing it, I had an idea, and I was like, right, I'm sorting out my Saatchi store to sell work. But how else can I sell work? Like, what? And also I've got works from 2015 to now, and they're different. So like, not all these works are going to work on certain websites, or not certain. Some certain works I'm not going to want to put on certain websites. Yeah. So I just looked into other places, and I found like 5 sites. I was like, this is promising. I could sell work here. Like there was a site for to progress your art and kind of get recognition and get discovered. There was a place just to sell your art, but to a different audience and sellers. And another one where it was kind of like you have control, and it's just you're kind of approaching the people that you've already got engaged through social media or just in person with your art.
Right. So
I was like, that's interesting. I was like, that's good. And I came away from that thinking, that's actually some decent work done. And it's just now I know what the next step is, but I won't get stoned for that. It's good work. But
you got stoned to do the research?
I got stoned to look into potential opportunities for my art. Yeah,
not to make work.
No,
to do the boring stuff.
That's the thing. I've done that before.
Because you like doing this, so maybe then you don't need to.
I've done narcotics and paid before, but like it didn't work out. Last time I did it, I was doing portraits, so it was different. But I just remember there was a moment when I was just trying to match a colour from the photo that I'd taken to the canvas, and I just couldn't for the life of me get that colour. And I became fixated on the fact getting that colour when really I didn't have to. Like I could use artistic license and just done a colour in a similar shade or colour I think would have worked. But I just because I was high and I was in that mindset, I was just like, no, I've got to get that exact colour, but it wasn't working. So I think it's weird. Like normally, if anything from drink to weed, like it tends to relax me and put me in a different headspace. But art already does that for me. So if I enter it in that headspace, it doesn't quite work out for me. It's like, you know what I mean? Like it's 2 parts of my world that are happy to be a part. I think I could look at art and talk art high.
I think painting's its own state of mind.
Yeah.
And being high is its own state of mind. And they're different. And so maybe for some people, those 2 things are like opposites, and they don't really go together like a jigsaw. Like they're just like.
Some things that mix like oil and water.
They might make something interesting, or it might just look interesting because you're high.
Yeah, exactly.
I really like that painting there, the square one behind
this
there.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like
new.
That's a new work. I did that the other week. That's like, I suppose, that's a combination. For me, it's like 2 paintings. It's like what you could see in the background was meant to be the finished thing, and I just wasn't happy with it. So I just threw something else on top, and it's busy. There's a lot going on, which obviously holds your attention.
Oh yeah, I think it works.
Yeah, but like you've got these different dimensions and you've got depth. I love achieving depth.
Yeah.
But not with black or white. You know what I mean? With more like colours or techniques or like the way they paint on the canvas. So it's always like I think getting contrast with not just the tones and colours you're using, but also just the lines or the style.
I think it works. Like you could overwork it now, but I think that's it looks finished to me.
Oh yeah, I would touch that now. Like it's that close to being just too much. You know what I mean? I like the colours, I like the position of it all, I like the layout.
It reminds me of the sea and the chaos of the sea, not so much the colour, but you know what I mean. And
Yeah,
like,
I do.
like photographs of like Milky Way or something like that.
Yeah, the ocean has like, it's obviously like this huge power of nature, and it's very unpredictable. So like, I found quite a lot of artists are kind of drawn to the ocean. I think it's a point of inspiration for a lot of people, even people who aren't artists. Like it's,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, there's every once in a while like, I'll pop into my head, like I've not seen the ocean for a while. That's weird. Like I need to see the ocean. Like it's definitely inspiring. It's dead calm as well. Like if you just hear the waves hitting the rocks and it's just you and the waves.
I think it's just that's a human thing. That's a very human thing. There's a lot of unhuman things that we are doing every day. So that's just getting back to like the rawness of our existence or whatever.
Yeah, I thought that recently. Like I've made kind of decisions in my life to kind of try and live more natural lifestyle, kind of go back to our hunter-gatherer days.
Yeah.
And just like instead of doing like I suppose like a weak example would be like instead of doing like a weekly shop, just get ingredients when you need them, and you know when I'll do that, it either means me walking somewhere with dogs or riding somewhere, and then it becomes a form of exercise. You know what I mean? And you get active and you forage it in a way. But obviously, you go to one place to get stuff, or you go to multiple places. But it's again touch of that, and recently I watched a documentary about like some of the oldest cave paintings, and these paintings like date to like 30,000-40,000 years. So then it kind of clicked. It's like, you know, me painting art is, you know, it's been with us for a long time. You know what I mean? Like our ancestors, you know, their main goal was to kind of survive, to, you know, reproduce, to find food, shelter, and water. Like that's kind of the 5 principles of our hunter-gatherers. And then, you know, next principle that came along, one of them was art. You know what I mean? Like it quickly became a thing in our evolution. Like it's not been like in the past couple of thousand years that we've discovered art with painting. It's practically in our DNA now. Like it's been a thing for so long. And you had these, you know, hunter-gatherers who the word art wasn't even invented yet, or as far as we know, or you know, they didn't have a concept of it, but they had an urge to kind of create what they saw, recreate it on the walls. You know what I mean? Like this. And most of the stuff on cave paintings are like, you know, depictions of like families or hunted events and stuff. But there's some that I saw where it was just hundreds of hands, and they just don't know how they did it, but you just see the outline of the hands and then whatever kind of material they used.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, that's an interesting piece. That's got an abstract or a contemporary feel to it. Like that's nothing to do with what they're doing.
I think
that's more creative.
I think they sort of put mud, like clay earth, iron oxide rich earth into the mouse, and then sort of swirl it around with water and then sort of spit it out over their hands.
And it's like that took a little bit of thought and consideration before they did it. So these people were creatives. They had the urge to create something, and they achieved it in, you know, a long time ago where it wasn't a thing. So I found that interesting.
I think there's an urge to do it. Maybe it's like
I know I have that urge. Like
I was going to ask you if you get that urge, because you are I call you an abstract expressionist painter. Would you call
Yeah, I would agree with that. Especially after I discovered that like some of my paintings will depend on my mood. So I have like a handful of styles I'll go to, but I don't walk in and go, right, I'm in the mood for that style, or I'm in the mood to do this kind of painting. I just come in and I start painting, and then my mood or where I'm at physically or mentally will dictate what ends up on the canvas.
Yeah.
Which is something I only realised recently, which is really interesting. So yeah, I definitely describe myself as an abstract expressionist because emotions are involved. But what were we back on again? What was
the urge?
The urge, yeah. So that urge. I can remember having it from like a young age, but it was like stuff on the wall. I draw a lot, like doodle. It was like school books or just at home, and then like on the walls and stuff like that, which you get in trouble for. So obviously, when I clocked on that, obviously I wanted to do something art related. So then when I started buying art materials and pads and stuff, then the work went from the wall and the floors and the notepads at school and stuff to the actual places where I was meant to do it.
Right.
Or was told to do it, I guess. And it's been there ever since. It's just something inside me wants to paint or wants to draw or wants to create something artistic. It's like it's, I suppose I can compare it to like when I used to be a smoker. When I used to crave a cigarette at certain points of the day, especially after a meal or a couple of pints of it. it's similar to that. It almost feels physical. I'm just kind of like, because if I don't paint for so long, my mental health deteriorates a little bit, and I find my patience disappearing. I find myself kind of short of temper, or just being frustrated over little things. And it's because I've not had a release. I've not painted for a while, which is something similar you have when you have a cigarette for a while. Your body starts craving nicotine. It's like your mood changes because you've not satisfied that craving.
Well, I suppose it's everything that builds up in modern life. In you, if you don't have a way to get that out, it can turn inwards and be more self.
Yeah, it becomes corrosive almost.
Yeah.
I think like art is my form of therapy. It's my way of navigating the modern world, and it doesn't take long for you to for us to educate ourselves to get that kind of sinking, hopeless feeling. And obviously, I come to my art to kind of not to express that, but more to kind of get away from that and to create a piece where other people can get away from it as well, or just like, I suppose a good painting for me, regardless of landscape, portrait, or whatever the subject is, is that it takes me away for a couple of minutes, like for a couple of minutes or for longer. It's just me and that piece of work, and all I'm thinking about is that piece of work. The only thing that's in front of me is that piece of work, and it creates this kind of like mental break, and you're not worrying about your day-to-day worries or where you're going next, or what's happening next, or how you're gonna afford that X, Y, Z. It's just you and this piece of work. And if it's a piece of work that appeals to you and it's a good piece of work, then it brings you in and it holds you there for a while. To the point where either you talk about that work for years to come, or you end up buying it and putting it home so you can get more of that respite. But that's kind of the main reason why I create art, is to kind of encourage different way of thinking and give people like a mental break and just kind of open some doors. Like, I think there's not enough perspective and not enough people looking at things different angles. It's very black and white, or in the direction the media's point you in. And it's about encouraging and prompting people to think differently and think outside the box. Right. And I think abstract work, abstract painting, at its simplest level is just kind of painting a canvas. But if it grabs someone and it engages them, then it gets them thinking, right, why am I so kind of drawn to this piece of work, when at the end of the day it's just paint on a canvas. And that's when it starts to promote a different way of thinking, and people start to step outside the box. Well, I hope they do. Even if they don't like it, it still makes them think, why don't I like it, or what is it about it that's not tickling my pickle? You know what I mean? Yeah, cheers, mate. But that's the thing is, it took me years to realise that. Like, I didn't know why I was painting abstract, apart from the reason that I wanted to. And then I think once you find out why you're doing what you're doing, especially in art, it kind of gives you that boost, and you produce even more works, or you just kind of have this freedom.
I think knowing why you're doing it is really important to you, because actually you can start to have like a bit of an existential crisis, because it does take up a lot of your time, and if it feels meaningless, then that can really do a damage on your mental health. Yeah,
I think it depends. Like, if you're doing it, it's sort of why you're doing it. It's because I want it, for the sake of it.
That's a good reason.
That's a good reason. But as long as you're comfortable with that, and that makes sense to you, that's fine. But obviously, some people need more than that. I never need a reason. I did it purely because I wanted to, and I felt this desire to do it. And then the reason kind of developed as I developed as a person. Right. I started painting abstract when I was. My first abstract painting, I would have been just over about 22 and a half, and I'm now 28. So like, it took me 6 years to not 6 years, but it took 2 or 3 years to paint abstract before I realised why I was painting it, apart from the fact that I wanted to and it made sense to me. Like, it just kind of, I'd paint portraits and landscapes and I enjoyed it, but I just found it too frustrating. But I've never found myself that frustrated with abstract. It's just like, it's not worked out, but then when painting doesn't work out, it just becomes an interesting second layer or texture or tone from the work that is going to eventually appear on that canvas.
Well, that's an interesting thing, doing a landscape, but that's doing a landscape to be the ground on which you do an abstract painting. That's an interesting thought. Yeah, it's quite common as well. I've seen a lot of abstracts. Landscapes that have got an abstract feel to them, or like kind of landscapes that are inspired. Abstract painting that is inspired by landscapes, and you can still just see the landscape to a degree, but you wouldn't feel comfortable describing it as a landscape. I find that quite common, but I think I love landscapes. It's just not for me.
I love the idea of.
It's like an in between real
Yeah.
life and.
It's weird, like I'm serious about abstract, and then if I'm messing around and just something casual art, then I might do a landscape.
Yeah. Well, painting isn't actually the thing it's representing.
Yeah.
So why not, exaggerate that even more?
Yeah, exactly.
The fact that it's a painting, and what paint can do.
I think paint can do a lot. I think it's a powerful thing. I think it's done a lot in the past, but.
And if you don't do it and you feel shit, then it's dangerous.
Yeah, it is
Right.
dangerous. I don't know how long I could go about paint before I start to lose it, I could probably, do something creative in another way. But it's something about just putting brush to canvas, you know what I mean? Like I've done stuff at home, I've done stuff outside, I've experimented with stuff, but it doesn't quite beat brush to canvas. There's just something about that which, puts me at ease and kind of zones me in. And it's just something that I'm always going to be doing. Like, I paint the floor in a minute. If I get older, I'm becoming an old man, I might have to get one of the big tables. I still have the paint canvas flat, but then I'll just lean over it. Cause I don't know.
Mobility.
Yeah, I think my practice will change as I get older because obviously restrictions and
I see pictures of Matisse in his bed with a giant pair of scissors.
Yeah, exactly. Or push on a massive stick, just painting the walls. Like, if you're an artist and you want to create, you will create. You'll find a way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's just how it is. Like, going back to the hunter-gatherers.
That's why it differs from other forms of work. That's why I don't call it work or a job, but it's an occupation. Because it is just something you occupy your time with, and maybe you could make a living from it. But you have an urge to make it whether or not you're making money from it.
Yeah, definitely. I think I used to.
It's like eating food, you need to eat food.
Yeah, it depends on your kind of. Your idea, your thoughts on the word work. Like, I never liked the idea of word work. I don't particularly enjoy work. It's like, you have someone above you that says, right, you're doing this job at this time till this time to make this that you need to live. And someone who's not got much love for money and capitalism and just possessions, you tend to be hostile towards work. You don't want to be there. You want to be here or do something else. So then, and I didn't relate the word work to my practice for years. But then I realised, behind the scenes stuff, like the submissions or pricing at work on websites or admin stuff, that is work, and you can embrace that and just acknowledge it as work. But it's working on something that you truly love, and it's working on going in the right direction. So I kind of changed my relationship with the word work, because before then, when I had to do this admin stuff, I'd enjoy it even less because it was stigmatised as word that I don't like for whatever reason. So I was like, right, I need to kind of get rid of that. Like, this is work, but it's a different kind of work, and it's working towards something that I love, so it's not a bad thing. And that only came a couple of years ago. Like before, I just would avoid things I didn't want to do, even if they in the end would have been positive towards my practice.
Yeah.
So now just kind of changing my thought process or how I relate to words or certain things I think it's important.
Do you think it's difficult? You think it's difficult to think of the business, to be business headed, but also to still be able to make work that's not just making work to sell? Do you know what I mean?
I think
the idea of it being viable.
I think if I was making work to sell, then my work wouldn't be any good.
No.
Because it's not what it's hard to kind of like describe it, because it's like I want to sell work, because then that money that I make will then go back into future works.
Yeah.
So making money is a priority in a sense, but I wouldn't, if I'm creating works to make money, then I might as well just pick another job to do that makes more money. If I'm just doing something for the sake of getting money, then it's not about the art. Then the art's no longer going to be interesting. It's no longer going to be sellable in my eyes, because it's like I'm only doing it to get paid. So it makes no sense.
Right.
So I'd become a banker or something, or get into stocks if I want to work to make money. But I think it is hard. I saw an artist the other day. She said a really good way to price your work is have a price for a square inch. So say like £2 per square inch, and then you go by the size of the work. So if a work, you know, has so many square inches, it's so much price. And obviously, if you become more popular, more successful, what you'll do is throw more quid on that square inch,
Right.
and you'll have this kind of like level pricing standard of all your works. Because I think size is a good way to go on it at the start. But sometimes it's still tricky because I have works that are like, you know, 18 by 14, and I love them more than I have works that are 40 by 40.
That's the thing. I think Klein, you know, the dude who did all the blue stuff.
Yeah.
He would have like small stuff next to much larger stuff, but it'd be the same sort of price. It's like just as important.
Yeah, that's true as well. Yeah. Yeah, I think pricing work can be hard, and I think
Just as much energy. I mean, that smaller one looks like far more's gone into that than that larger one.
yeah.
So it's a weird way of pricing it. And it would work. It would work for someone who did waterscape, water paint commissions of portraits, family portraits.
Yeah.
I don't know if it would work well for other kinds of artists. Well,
No, it'd definitely be tricky.
there's a certain amount of time on each square inch.
Yeah, I suppose that kind of formula would depend on what you're selling. Because in the past I've gone on size, but you know, there's some works that are my most prized works. Most of them are smaller, some are bigger, a lot of them are smaller, and those works are like works I don't even think about selling. They're like I put them aside. Like one day if I have a show, they're going to be in the show. Like that's an example of, you know, me, my practice, my work, what I'm trying to achieve. That's, you know, that's where I was at that period of time, and I'm you know, those works kind of become like children, and you can protect over them. I don't have many of them. I think I could probably count with 2 hands, maybe 3 hands, out of all the works I've done so far, the ones I truly love and, you know, would be sad to see go. The rest of them, you know, I'd like them to go. I'd like them to, you know, bring inspiration or bring something to people, because, you know, I'm not getting that from them anymore. You know, I've created them for that reason, and now it's time for them to go somewhere else. But there is some works that you kind of I have an emotional attachment to, and I would struggle to sell them. There's some I've turned down. People have offered to sell, I mean, buy 1 or 2 of them, and I've turned it down. I was like, I'm not ready yet to say goodbye. And it's like, I don't know, I just have in my head, you know, putting this, I want these works to really be like, I want people to see them. It's not about making money when it comes to these particular works, it's about people seeing them, because, you know, I want them to get what I'm getting. So yeah, going back to the whole money thing, it's like, if I was painting to make money, then I don't think I'd be painting.
Paint and decorator.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've had people say that, why be a paint decorator if you're an artist? I'm like, there's a difference between, you know, painting a canvas and having multiple colours and textures and, you know, techniques going on, and then painting a whole room the same colour. It's not quite the same. The only thing I can think of it being beneficial is if there was paint left over and I could take it to the studio. Yeah. But apart from that, I just don't think it would really benefit me.
Is it Balarasi that did, I don't say his name, where he just sort of had like a box room and he was just stood there painting in one colour, and then once he'd finished, started painting in another colour.
I don't know, maybe.
One colour at a time.
But see, if I did that, I had the urge to kind of scrape back and then see all the other colours come through. So you've got all this depth and all these layers. But obviously I couldn't just paint a room and then let it dry and paint another. It doesn't appeal to me. Like, obviously I paint canvas all black or all white, but then after that it gets a lot more complicated, a lot more enjoyable and different. But yeah, it depends. I think money and art, you know, almost since art's been a thing, or since money's been a thing, art's been attached to it. Yeah. And there's a lot of money in art. Like, there's a lot of money in art. Like everything, yeah. Money is attached to everything nowadays. And there's money to be made, and I problem the artists who, you know, make work to sell, and you know, all artists want to make enough money so they can just spend all the time painting or working towards their practice. But I think if you're just making art just for the pure purpose to make money, then I don't think you're almost not making art. You're just making a product that is disguising itself as art. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think art should be a product. It should be something that's valued and cherished and, you know, loved or disliked to the point where that person wants to.
Do you think that's the difference between art and craft?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think maybe. But then, you know, craft, like someone who's really good at portraits, and obviously they get commissioned, and then obviously get given the people they're gonna do. I wouldn't call that craft. I'd call that an art. So I think depends what angle you're looking at, but I think those two things, the lines blur it and they go back and forth from each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, if you start to think that that's where art becomes craft, then there's a lot of people who get really angry about it.
I think I wouldn't get angry at that. Like, I think
Some
I don't
people
know, talking about it, and I think that art should always be open for discussion and like room for debate. Like, it should be an open, very friendly environment to kind of, even if your thoughts might offend someone or your opinion might offend someone, so that's fine. Like, it's a discussion. You can have healthy disagreements.
I sort of just that's what art is really. It's not an opinion or anything. It's just about putting that idea and then seeing what do you think of it, and people's reaction. Sometimes art will get destroyed, and that's a pretty an outrageous reaction to a piece of art. But it's a reaction nonetheless, and it's a valid reaction.
Yeah, I think everything has a form of art or can be art. It just takes the right person or the right circumstances or venue to point out to other people that's art and go, okay, and look at it differently. You know, like I find the curves and the lines and the texture of a tree trunk as art. A lot of people walk by and go, oh, it's just a tree, or it's just
like these pieces here.
Yeah, like the things I've been working on with wood. Like before, like when I found this piece of wood, obviously it wasn't painted like this. I've painted this, but before I painted this, it was already art to me. The kind of like the shape of it, the depth, the texture, just like everything about it, I would look to that as a piece of art. And I've now just painted on it to kind of, you know, show off the elements of the piece of wood I think is already art to other people, to kind of say, look, this is art. Because some people would, you know, relate to me and walk past and go, yeah, that is art, I can see that. Some people just walk by and go, it's a bit of wood.
It is just a bit of wood and paint on.
Yeah. And in my eyes it's art. It depends, doesn't it? Like, I think.
But if you break it down, it's,
you know. Some people need it broken down, or some people just need the object to be taken away from the woodland or the outside setting and put it inside setting for them to go, okay, there's the beauty in it.
Okay, yeah.
You know what I mean? But like, I think
it is, yeah, well, it is hard to see the beauty in one thing if it's surrounded by lots of similar things, but then, like you said, put it in the white cube, for example, then you can just totally just focus.
Yeah, there's a reason why, you know, not everyone's an artist. Like if you're an artist, you have different perspective and kind of, you see a lot of things, sometimes see the world differently. And then when you see the world differently, you take these aspects of the world that you see differently or to everyone else, and you put it in a gallery or another event or location, and then you make people come to this venue and look at it like art, like they've not looked at it before. That's why I love contemporary art. Like, some people hate it, sometimes it's shit, sometimes it's good, it depends, but it's thought-provoking, it's interesting. It's like the whole urinal. Is it a piece of art? No. But when was the last time you had a 20-minute discussion about a urinal? Like, you've used them hundreds of times, but you've not spoke about them. But the second you take it off the wall and put it in a gallery, you're speaking about this urinal, you might not like it, but you're now speaking about it. So in its own right, it becomes art because of that. If something is put in front of you and it gets an emotion from you, if it's good or bad, or it creates a discussion, good or bad. Again,
I think it's a good piece of art because with emotions, with art, it's often just seen as like very sad, depressing, or very uplifting. But often people not think about awkwardness or laughter, or like, you know, this, or orgasms, or just the things that the more common emotions. I don't know.
Yeah.
The more the feel-good emotions. I don't know. There's so many different feelings and emotions we go through. In art, there's so much still to explore because of that.
Yeah, it's like, how often does, you know, people become silly or act silly or feel silly? How many pieces of work have you seen that, you know, get across the emotional silliness or the active silliness? Not many. I mean, why? Like, it's an emotion we all go through, we all feel. Why is there not more people trying to recreate that or inspire that emotion again? Because, you know, it's probably mainstream. It's probably, if it's silly, it's going to be written off as not serious. But it's like, if it's an artwork and it's actually portraying an emotion or an action which is silliness well, and you get that across, then it's a fantastic piece of art. You know what I mean? Because it's portraying something that, you know, we all go through. It's something that we can relate to.
That's what cartoons do.
Yeah.
Well, really well. And so many people watch them, and they love them and they get tattoos with them and it's a very
Yeah,
important
exactly.
part of their lives. And then they go into a gallery and it's just, oh, that's shit. Because it just doesn't relate to them whatsoever. It's not really been made for them.
Yeah.
But if they, it's hard to make stuff for everyone as well.
Yeah, I don't. Not everyone's gonna like my art, and I don't mind that. I don't mind if someone dislikes it, as long as it creates a discussion and they kind of explain to, they kind of justify why they don't like it or what I need to change them to like it. Because again, it's just a discussion, and then they don't realise, but they're kind of developing their kind of love for art and what they like and don't like. I don't mind being part of the journey, even if it's a negative way. It's like, as long as it does something, regardless of what that thing is, I'm happy. As long as I always thought, like when I'm painting abstract, I always think of it as making something out of nothing. It's like, you've got whatever your chosen materials around you, brushes, and then a blank canvas or paper, whatever, and then you paint something. You know what I mean? You don't go in there with an idea or a landscape or portrait or a set of motion. You just start applying what you've chosen to apply, in my case paint, onto the canvas until you've created something which you can engage with, or you find inspiring, or you find just pleasant to look at, and then you stop and you walk away from it, and if you think you're happy with it, you sign it and you put it out there, and then it's up to the person in front of the painting, the viewer, to make sense of it, make sense of it for them. Because you can have two people next to an abstract work, so let's take a Rothko for example, and they don't say anything to each other, and then they walk away and they do like a 100-word essay on the work, and there's a high chance that the essays are going to be very different. And it doesn't matter if they're positive or negative, as long as they've actually managed to write 100 words just because they've been in front of this painting for 20 minutes, then that painting has done its job because it's inspired the person to write 100 words. You know what I mean? There's not many things we see in our day-to-day life where we could write 100 words about. But art you can, or more, because there's something about it that we get pulled to. It's something in our psyche and our DNA which drags us towards art, and the past couple of thousand years we've just been developing different ways to do it, different styles and techniques. And like the reason I do abstract is because I can still get that emotional and that response from someone that's looking at something more easily related, like a portrait of a sad woman or a beautiful landscape somewhere they've been or want to be, and all I've done is put paint on the canvas, so it becomes more interesting to me. So I'm like, okay, why do you like it? I mean, end of the day, let's break it down. It's just paint on the canvas, but what is it about you? What is it about that work that pulls you in? And obviously, people say different things. It could be the colours. It could be, just this one section. For some reason, I can't stop staring at it. And then after staring at that one section, I found another section I like. You know what I mean? It's a conversation, and it opens up, doors in your mind and different ways of thinking. That's why I find abstract so interesting. Like, it's not easy art. Like, you can look at it and go, that's nice to look at and walk away from it. But like, if you ever think, it's like, if you ask yourself the question, why do I like it though? Then it opens doorways, and like, sometimes you see stuff in that people don't see, which is always interesting as well. Or it reminds you of things. Like you mentioned the ocean.
Yeah. Well, I often think of the ocean when I'm looking at abstract work, because it's just an abyss. And I think that's what abstraction is. It's just like an abyss. Or if you jump into your mind, there's just so much going on. But chaos is almost like the opposite to chaos. One is just complete silence. So it's like under the ocean there could be lots of things going.
Yeah.
But on the surface it's just very still. So like a Rothko, like you were saying, but it would look very calm. But there's probably more going. You have to stare at it for so long in one of these dimmed rooms.
Yeah, there's no limitations. Like, you could constantly think of new things that, these new thoughts have been inspired by this particular painting, but obviously with other forms of art like landscapes or portraits or sculptures, traditional things, just basically like traditional art. It's like, if it's a sad woman on the canvas, it's a sad woman and you relate to that sad emotion, and there's still different levels you can take it, but there's going to be a point where you can't really take it any further. Like how many levels and how much depth can you go into one emotion? A lot, but it's that one emotion. But if you've got an abstract painting that could inspire multiple emotions, or just something that you're not even sure what it is, it leaves that kind of you see like a film or TV show, that character like The Matrix, when Neo ends up in that Matrix first time, he's in that vast white room, and all those guns appear, and he kind of explains to him what the Matrix is. It's like you end up in that room where it's just like this thought is endless. Like you could just keep going off into different directions, and you know, works that tend to inspire that kind of thinking and that kind of depth, and you know.
And in that sense, it's really hard. It's pretty amazing how you're sort of staying on a path. There's so many different paths of that path you can go off. Do you maintain this sort of abstract expressionist practice?
It's because that's what I love the most, I think. And I think I'm always pushing myself to try different works, and I don't want to be comfortable as an artist. I think when I get comfortable, I don't produce my best work. I just produce paintings that's similar to the one before because that particular painting was popular or successful or it's sold.
How do you make yourself uncomfortable? Work? Is it the chair you sit on?
Well, obviously I normally paint on the floor, don't I? So it's kind of
awkward.
I'm determined not to make the same painting twice. That's a good place to start. And then just push myself with like materials or techniques and stuff like that. Just not. If I find myself doing something that I've already done before, then I'm like, right, I ain't doing that again. I've just done that. So why I want to repeat myself? So then, you know, I'm suddenly go from that direction to, you know what I mean? It's something as simple as that. And kind of crudely put, but like the way I describe it is, say if you're standing in the ocean, I think we'll probably go out to the ocean a few times in this little chat. You know? And you up to your waist, you're comfortable. You can either stand and breathe, or you can swim and breathe.
Right.
I mean, you're gonna be fine. As you go deeper into the ocean, you get to that point where you could just get your tiptoes on the floor and your mouth just above the water. And at that point, it makes more sense to swim than to stand because I'm comfortable. When it comes to my art, I want to be at that point where I'm not quite comfortable.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because if I'm not 100% comfortable, when I say comfortable, like when I'm painting, that's when I'm most comfortable, it's when I'm most at ease. But I don't want to become, I suppose, better words, content. So like, I want to be a little bit, you know, out my element and a little bit clueless when it comes to painting what I'm painting, because that's when something new happens and that's when something exciting happens. Like this painting here. When I was painting this, I was completely out of my comfort zone. I had no idea what I was doing. It was a painting that had gone wrong, so I just had that kind of carefree attitude and was meant for it. And then I walked away from it and then came back a few days later and it dried, and it's quickly become one of my most favourite paintings ever. Like, this is on the list of paintings that I'm not keen to sell, but I'd like to show in the future. Mm-hmm. And this has also has kind of inspired a new style of painting as well, more colourful and this kind of, you know. So a lot of this is, you know, by chance. I put the material down there, but it was up to materials and how they were going to act with each other and where they were going to settle. So I don't have so much control over it. And that element of, you know, having no control and not knowing what you're doing, it's a little bit unsettling and uncomfortable, but at the same time, you produce, you know, more interesting works because you're outside of you. It's the fear of the unknown, I think. For a lot of people, isn't nice, but I find it exciting. I have no idea what's going to end up in that canvas. And when it doesn't work out, it's fine, I'll just paint over it. When it does work out, it's just like a beautiful moment. Mm. And, you know, I don't. So maybe the word uncomfortable is one way of articulating it, but like.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be a common theme amongst painters, like not being able to quite control everything perfectly.
Yeah.
And you just can't. It's impossible with paint. It's just the nature of, like.
No,
even it's not a photograph, is it?
Yeah, you've got to roll the punches. It's like if you've not got that particular colour that you wanted, or that colour didn't dry the way you wanted it, like what do you do? Like, do you start again because you want that exact colour, or do you just embrace that new colour, or do you just go over it and add to it? You know what I mean? Like it's never gonna. I really struggled to paint if I had exact paint in my head and I was like, right, I need to get it from here up to here. Ain't that? You got to roll the punches. You just go. You do one mark and you work off that mark. You add one colour, you work off that colour. You know what I mean? Like, especially when you paint abstract. For me, it's like you're completely in the present. It's not about the past, not about the future. You're not thinking about those two things. The only thing you think about is what is in front of you and what you're trying to achieve, and that's it. And it's a beautiful moment, and I think you can relate. Other artists can relate. There's times when you get into that kind of headspace where it's just you and what's in front of you, and you working on it. Where, you know, you'll come out of it for a second and you'll be like, I'm starving, or I need to go to the toilet, or my mouth's dry, because you're not eating or drank or going to the toilet in hours, because you're not thinking about those things, you just think about what's in front of you. It kind of becomes almost like a form of meditation almost. Or it's a beautiful thing, but yeah, especially playing abstract, well, for me, it's kind of like focus on that one moment, you know, the present, which is, it kind of comes back full circle and it becomes form of therapy, because escapism. I think a lot of art is escapism. Like some art is, you know, kind of pointing out things that need to be pointed out and issues that need to be resolved, you know, or art is kind of sometimes a tribute to something beautiful or brilliant.
Should that be why so many artists are arseholes?
I think we all have the capacity to be an arsehole, and I think
We all have one.
yeah, and we all have it as well. True. No, I don't know. Some people, I bet there's one person that one somewhere. You know what I mean? Some medical miracle. But there is a lot of artists that are arseholes, but there's a lot of lawyers that are arseholes, a lot of bankers that are arseholes, there's a lot of politicians that are arseholes. So I think, you know, arseholes are unavoidable.
I think it's that thing when you do, maybe if you ignore everything around you too much, and then you just focus on yourself too much. But I suppose with art, it's not really, I don't know whether it's focusing on yourself, or it's a weird, what are you focusing on? I mean, you could say the painting, but go more abstract and detailed than that.
Yeah, I think it's one of those questions that like only the artist can answer. Like, what I'm focused on is just, you know, what is currently in front of me, and that's it. And then it's about coming out of that point and then kind of leave it alone when you think you can't do any more and enough is enough. And then it kind of, the other thing I practice about, you know, what I'm trying to achieve in my works and what I'm trying to get out of people, that came, you know, outside of painting and looking at my paintings, you know what I mean? But it's not necessarily in my head when I'm painting. There's not really anything in my head when I'm painting apart from the fact I'm painting. It really clears my mind. It's one of the few things, like, you know, apart from, you know, probably sex and good weed, like it's one of the few things that completely cleanses my mind and clears it out, and, you know, at that present moment it's just you and what you're doing, and that's it. There's nothing else popping in to ruin it or distract you. And, you know, I get distracted easily in most things, but when it comes to like painting, it focuses me probably more than most things will. To be honest.
Yeah. It's really good. Yeah, I agree with me. I get that too.
You just zone into it.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen all the time. Like the odd day, like you can relate. Like the odd day you come to the studio and you don't pick up a paintbrush, but you find yourself doing something else. But like
driving straight back home for me.
I just find myself cleaning or kind of, you know, organising, or just it makes me like. Sometimes I don't want to be.
When was the last time you cleaned this?
Oh Jesus, not properly for ages.
These sort of neatly piled up.
They're semi-neat, isn't they?
Yeah.
Over here was where I sweeped a load of rubbish. And then
sweep it into the corner.
this is the thing, I went to sweep it and I was gonna, you know, like most people, I'll sweep everything to one section, one part of the room, and then I'll sweep it up with just trying to brush. But then obviously, take this away. I was looking at it and I was like, there's a lot going on, there's a lot of colour, there's things that keeping my eyes, there's things that make me engaged and keeping me engaged. So I was like, I'm just going to add to this pile, and it's kind of going to become like a, you know, like a shrine or some kind of installation, you know, just for me, like it's like I'm not quite made sense of what it's going to be yet. So obviously I'll photograph it, I'll document it, and if I really like it, I'll keep all the materials and take them down to London with me. But
really?
Yeah.
I like the measuring tape sticking out.
Yeah, it's just, this is, these things only happened because of the fact that I was painting something. So, and, you know, some of them have the colours and, you know, the depth and the contrast on them that the paintings have. So in their own right, they become in a piece of work, and it's kind of like, if someone saw this, they'd be like, okay, this is an artist who's, you know, his practice is messy. I imagine his practice is messy. Same if you looked at the clothes I wear, it's like, okay, it's a messy painter. And it's like, I saw, when I was in Edinburgh, I saw Rothko's studio recreated, and it's fascinating, and it's a shithole, but a beautiful shithole. Like, he has, you know, references, material like magazine cuttings and photos and just like, you know, stuff like this. And old brushes and paint pots and stuff, just everywhere. He doesn't think, like when I'm painting and I don't need it more, it goes, or it goes to the side. I'm not thinking about, oh, make sure it's all neat and stuff. It's just about, you know, this is the kind of result of me painting here. And like, as it builds and there's more stuff added to it, it's kind of becoming a piece of art in its own sense. And a lot of people see that as a messy corner, but and that's what I used to, but now I don't see it as a messy corner anymore. And I like the idea of things kind of building up a little bit and kind of, you know, adding to it. And I love the colours of it, I love the textures of it. It's kind of got like a, I don't know, like a bonfire or kind of feel to it just because of the position, the wood and stuff.
Well, there you go. I think, you know, I think that comes back to like the primitive, you know, feeling, like a bonfire.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the joy and the fun of being an artist. Like something that started off as me just trying to clean my studio became something that could potentially be a piece of art that I'm excited about. I'm not sure yet. I might never pursue it. I might pursue it. Depends how it develops. But when I'm done with something, 9 times out of 10, I was chucking that corner now. But then I'll just see how it looks. And then if it does get something from me, then I'm like, right, it's a piece of art. And then it's just about, you know, what to do with it next.
A similar way to working with painting, I suppose. Sort of an automatic thing, you're just not thinking about it.
Yeah, because there's a lot of thought and effort put into my works, but it's not the kind of thought and effort that most people would portray as thought and effort. And also me, like, there's a different form of effort and, you know, put into my works. And it's something that I still struggle to kind of describe because I'm still learning, I'm still figuring it out, I'm still, you know, articulating my practice. And I think I'll always be doing that. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's fun to constantly learn new things and discover things about yourself. It's like, I think art in general is like a fertilizer for the mind and the body, and it can definitely help you grow. But that's my opinion. I mean, not everyone holds art so highly.
I think the making of art and, you know, taking part in looking at it and making it, this definitely would, it makes, well, you've just been curious then and there. It can make you more curious in other parts of your life. You start seeing, you know, when it's golden hour outside, and you'll notice the light hitting the trees, and you'll notice the colours outside more.
Which might get you into trees, and then next thing you know, you're studying trees at university. It's not necessarily like, creativity isn't necessarily going to lead to you being an artist in one way or another. It could lead to other things. It can make you find beauty in something else, and you're like, oh, that's beautiful, I want to pursue that. I think, you know, I mean, creativity can be used in either ways, of course it can, but I think at its, you know, most basic level, I think it helped anyone. I think it helped everyone, and creativity is definitely something that should be prompted in schools more and should be fixed on, you know, or like worked on more, because I think it only promotes, you know, change and something better, or just more like questions. I think well, we're a better place if you ask more questions. I mean, people are starting to ask more questions now, and some artists ask questions with their art. I think the more questions are asked, the better. I think the more creatives we have out there, the better, because, you know, like touchscreen, someone created that, someone thought of that idea. That person, in my eyes, is a creative person because they came up with an idea, and it's changed the world. Like most people have a phone with touchscreen. Most people will interact with touchscreen at some point in their day. You know what I mean? And that came from creativity. Someone was creative and thought of that idea, which I always find really interesting, because you watch films, these old sci-fi films with these predictions of the future, and none of them thought of touchscreen. You don't see touchscreens in these old sci-fis, but then touchscreen became an actual thing, and now it's been incorporated in more TV shows and films. But, you know, those people who are creative writers couldn't come up with the idea of a touchscreen. Someone actually came up with the idea that invented it, because, you know, he wasn't an artist, he worked with technology, which I find really interesting. I think creativity is a good thing. You can't get enough of it, really. I think it can benefit most things in life, most aspects of life.
I think with inventors, they are inherently creative. I think there's always a way of doing something differently. Like there's some famous experiment where they just got a bunch of people together and asked them to sweep up some mess, and everyone did it slightly different, in a slightly different rhythm with the brush.
Yeah.
Sweeping up the dirt, how they pull it, how they push it, maybe they do it in a really into the middle.
One big pile, loads of little piles, like.
And that's your DNA. That's a very individual thing. So if everyone was doing that, but they had a paintbrush, or I don't know, it doesn't don't necessarily have to.
Yeah, I think don't like. Oh, you're gonna be creative and you go towards the arts. It's like I don't know how it works. Obviously, I believe in massive reform when it comes to the education system. It's like past 20, 30 years, 40 years. The world has never experienced so much change, especially in mankind. Yet our education system and the way we teach our children has barely changed. It's just, it needs to change. And having not necessarily an art class, but just a period of time, a class with some kind of format. I have the ideas, but I don't have the answers. That just prompt creative thinking or creative actions in one way or another would be beneficial for a lot of people. Because if you approach most things from an angle outside the box and from a fresh and new angle, chances are you're going to come up with something that's better, something that's going to benefit more people, or benefit the planet, or benefit you. I think
definitely think you can blend art in with other subjects.
Yeah, definitely. You have creative writing.
Yeah.
Why can't you have more creative stuff? Like, what's the worst that can happen? People come up with wacky ideas. They're wacky, but they work. They don't.
Well, that's how you learn. You learn through making mistakes, but if you don't allow people to make mistakes, then
if there's more creativity in government, Christ, we'll be in a better place. It's like, look outside the box, think of different things. It's like these.
So they don't seem to be able to learn from mistakes.
Oh no, that's the one thing mankind is terrible at. They've not learned lessons of learning from from past mistakes, especially if you're a Tory. But God knows why. That's a whole other discussion on a different kind of social media platform you've not had yet. When you get really political.
Twitter.
I don't have Twitter, but
it's a cesspit.
I need somewhere to rant sometimes.
It's a piece of paper.
Yeah. Just friends and family trying to convert them to the right cause or a better cause. That's be my cause, but the right direction, because there's multiple directions in life, but there's some directions that are just wrong and you shouldn't go in them. And it's to steer people away from those directions. But art's powerful. Art can do that. Art can kind of steer people in different directions. It can shine. It's obviously before social media stuff. Art definitely would shine a light and educate people on matters that people didn't know much about. But obviously with the power of social media and the wealth of knowledge you have in your pocket or in your hand, it's different nowadays. But I still think art has a massive role to play when it comes to bettering the world or bettering people in one way or another. Because some people have perspective and they can't relate to something horrendous happening to someone else because they've not been through it, And sometimes they need something put in front of them that's powerful and shocking, or has a message for them to realise. Oh God.
Well, I think a part of it is people are so exhausted from working all day that they just want to plop out and they can't be arsed with doing other people's pain, and it's hard to be empathetic when you have no energy.
And ignorance is bliss as well. If you don't know about all the horrible things happening, if I didn't know about those terrible things happening, I feel better as a person because, I sympathise with people. I don't like bad things happening to good people. So if I know it's happening, of course it's going to affect my mood. And then obviously, one of the reasons why I obviously come back to painting, because obviously it kind of takes my mind off those kind of things. Because once you learn something, you can't unlearn it. So unless you get involved in a car accident or something, you lose your memory. But I think art's a fantastic respite, but it can also be a fantastic tool for people to, get things done and try and do good, not bad. But I think it can be used for bad as well. Like, if you look at propaganda cartoons for like a lot of world wars we've had, they're horrendous and they go on a lot of stereotypes and just outright racist sometimes. But it works. Like, I bet the English people didn't know much about the Nazis or Hitler, but obviously they read the papers and they saw these cartoons and these posters stuff, and they quickly were against him for good reason, but also because the government wanted people to be against him, so it would make the war easier. But if the English government wanted people to be on the side of the Nazis, then if they put enough effort into the art and the media and the coverage, then they could have done that. They probably, when it got to the point of the gas chamber stuff, they probably went too far and there wouldn't be enough people to. I'd like to think that English people would be against it, but you don't know, do you? Like
it's if you were in Germany and Hitler was saying to you, "You're the most beautiful person in the world because you're a German." That's sort of how fascism works. They're basically saying you're the best, you are better than all of these people because you are this and they are not this. And then I suppose that's how brainwashing works. And that can definitely, art can definitely help that a lot.
Yeah, propaganda and stuff.
But if you do the opposite as well, like you said, it can be a good force for change and the social good. I mean, how do you do that? Can you tell me in one sentence?
How do you do that? Oh, it's a tricky one. Paint what you. Who was it? I can't remember the artist, but he said, "Paint what you see."
It's a good one, especially if you see shit going down.
Yeah, so obviously let's take the Black Lives Matter movement for example. It's like if you see the things if you see the things that are going on, if you understand the reasons why the protesters are necessary, then you can easily take that and then put it towards your craft and your art. So then you'll make something, and people will see what you see. You know what I mean? Like, the reason these protests and these things are happening is because there's a lot of ignorance. A lot of people don't understand. You know what I mean?
People really don't understand Black Lives Matter. They think it's some sort of group that's against everyone. For some reason, that's just because the right wing news channels probably, and you've got these weird anchormen that are just like,
Well, 8% of the UK media is owned by 5 people and they're all Tory supporters, so it's not a coincidence. But
it's a simple statement though. There's a lot of injustice going on, disproportionately against people of colour, and to say that people of colour matter is just to say that they are human.
Yeah.
And if you have a problem with saying they're human, then I don't think that's very nice.
Yeah, if you break down most, protests or movements like Black Lives Matter and the stuff that happened, in the 90s and the 80s and the 60s all over the world, especially in America and England and Europe, it's like it's simple. It's like there's a group of people that are not being treated right because of this. You know what I mean? Because of X, Y, and Z. And we want to resolve X, Y, and Z, so we're all equal and things are fair. And these protests educate people. They educated the hell out of me. It made me look into things more. It made me, have more perspective and look at things different angles.
Yeah, I mean, surely if everyone feels safe and comfortable, then that would be better for everyone.
Yeah,
because you're not seeing as much people in distress. Everyone's maybe not high-fiving each other, maybe not even friends with each other, but when they see someone getting battered on the street just because of the way they look, they're like, fuck off.
Yeah.
Well, I'll kick you in the head.
Yeah, every human being is equal. I'd go next level and say every living thing on this planet is equal, but we don't. A lot of human beings don't see it like that. We still see every resource this planet has, living or non-living, as a right and something that we can take and use for our benefit. And I don't think that's the case. And I think it's done the world a lot of damage, that attitude. But end of the day, every human being is equal. Simple. We all came from the same place. We all look slightly different, but that's literally as deep as it goes. It's not an issue. Like sometimes you might not get along with someone because their views are different, and their views might have been a product of their class system or their culture and stuff. That's fine. You can disagree with people. It's impossible to get on with everyone. We're all different people because of certain situations or upbringings or things that we've gone through, which makes us unique, but it doesn't make us different in the sense that some people preach about. But yeah, white privilege as well. I didn't realise what white privilege was. It took me educating myself to realise what it was, and it's incredibly simple. You know what I mean? White privilege it's not a complicated subject. It's just people. I struggle to see it at the beginning. Other people struggle to see it because of our privilege. Because why do I'm a white person. I've never had to think about my race or talk about my race, and my race has only affected me positively as far as I know in my life, and that's where my privilege comes from, and that's when I realised, I mean, because I'm white, I'm privileged because my skin colour will not hold back in any way, shape or form. But if I was black or Asian or just a member of the BAME community, purely on the colour of my skin or where I come from, can be a disadvantage to me. And that's where they don't have privilege, it's where I have privilege. And that's not. It's 2021 and that's the thing, and it's disgusting. Like, obviously it needs to change, and hopefully it changes, but you know, it's kind of going to take a long time. But art has its role to play, I think. I don't know if my art has a role to play. Maybe in the future, the more political I get, the more political my art might be, and I might move away from painting abstract so much, but you know.
Well, I see a portrait. Is that a portrait?
Where?
Where? The blue and red.
No, that's a work that I have no idea if it's finished or not. I don't know if I should do more to it or leave it.
I think there's another piece that's missing, like their nose.
Yeah. I think I might miss something.
Pinocchio nose and elongated.
I was thinking a big white or something like that. But
Oh yeah?
yeah. I'm not too sure.
Howard Hodgkin would, like, if he didn't know what was going to happen, he'd say something, he'd wreck it,
Oh yeah.
but then he could start working back into it. Or
It's-
maybe that would finish it, that like last mark.
It's a beautiful thing when you're painting something, and obviously if you do something a part that you like, or if it's going the way you want it to go, you become precious over it, and you become protective over it, and you start to become a bit more careful with the brush strokes you're doing and the colours you're using and stuff, and then you end up creating work you're not really into, or a work that's gone wrong. So when you don't care for the work and you just go for it and just see what happens, making the best out of a bad situation. Sometimes when I find myself in that situation, I end up creating some of the best works I've ever done, because there's no strings attached. You know what I mean? It's just take a step back. Oh, that's actually come out quite well, and there's an element of freedom there, which is brilliant. And it doesn't always happen, but when it does happen, it's a beautiful thing. Because then you just continue to paint them. Like you've got nothing to lose. You know what I mean? Like, it's a carefree attitude. And all you want to do is create something that's interesting and engaging. But it's not about how you're going to do it or what, or if something goes wrong, it's just about doing it. See what happens. So it's a nice place to be, that kind of freedom. It's another level of freedom. I always feel free when I paint anyway, but when I get to that point, it's a different level of freedom where there's no real consequences, and it's just like excitement. What's going to happen. Like when I leave, I'm sure a lot of artists can relate to this, especially ones that use a lot of paints and a lot of materials or water that takes a while to dry. You get excited when you leave studio because you know what you're going to come back to. I can't guarantee my work can stay exactly the same, because it gets to a point where it's up to chance, and it's up to the paint where it settles and where it goes, and some colours tend to fade or become brighter when they dry.
Right.
And that kind of element of the unknown is exciting and enjoyable. So I'd say probably I don't know. Like if I looked at any painting around here, I'd say like 8% purposeful and then 20% chance.
That is interesting, because if you go back home with a picture of how it looked in your mind, and then you come back and it looks completely different, you might work back into it, and then it will just develop into something completely different to how you left it the day before. It will. That's painting. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
That's what it is, isn't it?
It's hot.
Yeah, it is hot, but I think the fear of the unknown is something that a lot of artists have to just get used to. Because if you turn around to me when I was painting portraits, and painting properly and really getting into it and falling in love with art again when I was 20, and they turned to me and said, "You're going to paint abstract and you're going to love it and you're going to do much else," I would have told that person to fuck off. But no, I don't. I'm not really into abstract. It's not my thing. But the second I started painting abstract, it just clicked. I was like, this fits in with who I am as a person and what I'm trying to achieve and what I'm trying to do. And that was it for me. I was like, I was away. So
I think it suits you.
it does, yeah.
You look right there with the paintings behind you.
It matches my personality and what I stand for and what I want as well. I think the whole world's abstract. You know what I mean? I think it's a very weird thing. A lot of abstraction out there, I think.
there is a lot of weird things that happen in odd jobs. Unusual. Have you read Bullshit Jobs? It's a book called Bullshit Jobs.
I don't know.
It's a good book.
What kind of bullshit jobs is there?
It's
Is this jobs that are pointless? Or
bureaucracy and jobs that are pointless where you can get them done in an hour but you have to stay for the full day.
One of those.
But also jobs in like the introduction is that an army officer needs a computer moving but he can't move it himself, so he has to ring up this firm that comes to move computers, and then they have to fill out a form, the people on the phone in their firm, and then they assign one of the employees who's classified as a computer mover or whatever to drive 2 hours, stay in a hotel, and then go to the army barracks, move the computer down the hall into a different room after he's boxed it up, and then set it up again.
Yeah.
And then it's just like silly things like that are like non-jobs.
I think the economy's built on a lot of bullshit, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, especially with house prices and things. I mean, that's why I just really dislike that, because you think builders are doing a brilliant thing. They're building houses for families to live in and people to live in. They need places to live, and then you've got rich foreign investors and just rich people buying them, hoarding them, and then renting them out
stupid
high
prices.
because they control the supply and demand.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like,
It's just,
I think
it's horrible.
Every election, there's always in this country, there's always talk of a housing crisis, and there's more people in these houses, people who live somewhere. You know what I mean? We no longer live in the trees or in the woods. You know, but it's like, it makes no sense when it's like, then why are we building houses that no one can afford? It's like if you've got no people, it's like if you've got no people who are starving, you open a restaurant, you go, come in, I'll feed you, and they're like, we can't afford these prices. Well, then it's like, get out of the restaurant then. It's like, what's the point? I thought you opened a restaurant to feed people, but they can't afford to eat there. So you've done nothing. It's so weird, man. I find it so strange how, we're always talking about we need more houses, but none of them are affordable. So it's like we have the houses, but people can't afford to live in them, or have to get into a stupid amount of debt to get them, or bend over backwards to get them. It's just, or sacrifice a life just to tick these boxes that society have put in front of us. You know what I mean? Like we're all, when we're born, none of us realise we're all put on this path that we're meant to follow. And when you go off the path, depending on who you have in your life, but normally it's a worried uncle or grandparent or parent who kind of gives you grief or tease you about this direction you're going. It's like, well, I'm just going in a different direction to you. It's like I'm not grateful for this path that's been set in front of me, because it's not my path. It's not engaging. It's not exciting me for life. I wouldn't feel excited working 9 to 5 and then living for the weekend and putting almost half my wages towards a house that I rushed to buy. Maybe I didn't want to live in that house anymore. Maybe I didn't want to live in that area, but I had to buy a house. I had to live somewhere, didn't I? You know what I mean? So I think a lot of guys tend to leave the beaten track and kind of go their own way.
Yeah.
And I think that's a healthy thing. I think it's like come off the track and just walk on the grass for a bit. You know what I mean? Take a detour down the woodland lane, like you might get something out of it.
Yeah, I mean, look at dogs. Happy as Larry, just sleep half the day and then go for a walk. It's brilliant for the food. See another dog bark at them.
Yeah, but I'd be interested if we got the kind of social kind of what we just talked about, and we put a dog through it. See how happy that dog is. But maybe that dog's look. You have to do these
9
things.
to 5, Mr.
Yeah, you have. Yeah, you spend 8 hours a day in a certain place doing something you might want to do. It's like you have to live in his house. I want to come here. It's like, well, sell that house first before you come in, and all that kind of stuff. Like, it'd be interesting to see how depressed that dog would become. Yeah, animal cruelty, you couldn't do it. I wouldn't put a dog through that. Let in person. But I think one of the things that the arts has always done is always pushed against that kind of thing. Like I'm recently going to move to London and looking at traditional flats and houses to live in, but also looking at house shares where 20 to 30 people have converted a warehouse or an old office building into flats, and it's like a lot of these contemporary spaces where people live now, a lot of them are creatives, a lot of them are artists who live there, and it's not a coincidence, because you know a lot of people shun that and go, that's a bit peculiar, that's a bit strange, it's not, you know, a traditional path that's been put in front of us. Doesn't mean it's not beneficial, it might not be good, and it sometimes takes an artist's eye or creative's eye to kind of see the potential there, or just have the willingness to try it.
I think it's another world because you just have like an art community in those places. It's someone who will work in TV, you know, freelancers, artists, and just people that take pictures for a living, and it's just a lot different to the norm, mainstream.
And I think like it's not a coincidence that
that's almost making your life more uncomfortable, a little bit. The people around you make it comfortable, but it can be uncomfortable practically living in a warehouse.
Yeah, definitely. Like, and it's something I'm curious about. I'm not sure if I'll pursue it, but like, it's not a coincidence that I don't think I've ever had a conversation with another artist or creator that wasn't interesting. You know, like it's not a coincidence that, you know, you're doing this now because you've had so many discussions with artists, but you got to a point now it's like I want to document them. I want to share them because they are interesting. They are thought-provoking. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people that are going to watch us talk about art are going to be into art themselves or be creatives in one way or another.
That's the thing. You're not going to have a notepad when you're in a candid conversation.
Yeah.
And that's all I want to have with art. I don't want to have a list of questions.
Yeah, we've spoken, and every once in a while I've had to write someone's name down to look into it.
Yeah.
I don't get that with other people, like say family members or people that I work with. I have conversations and I don't need to write something down, or like I don't walk away going, that was interesting, or I can see that differently now.
Yeah.
I think, you know, creatives tend to gravitate towards creatives, and you know, people who aren't creative tend to gravitate towards creatives sometimes because it shows another angle. It shines a light on something. You know, I've pointed out things that I found beautiful to people that think I'm crazy, but when I'm explaining it, go, oh, I see that. You know, my housemate, you know, take dogs out for walks sometimes. You know, I mean, when he walks, he looks down a lot. And I was like, look up more. Like, when you go for a walk, mate, if you look up, it's a lot more beautiful. Like, if you see the contrast of these vibrant greens against the, you know, the blue of the sky and the branches.
Has he called you to tell you that he's stood in shit because he was looking up?
No. It might have happened, I don't know. It doesn't happen to me though, to be fair. Last time I actually did try shit, but it's like, don't limit yourself to just looking down when you're walking. You know what I mean? Eye level, look to your left, look to your right, look up. There's a lot out there. There's a lot of beauty, and sometimes you just need someone else to point out to you for you to clock on and go, oh, that is beautiful. I didn't think about that. I didn't see it before. So yeah, people did it to me before as well. Like, obviously, my experience working with people with autism, they're something with such fascination and such awe. And I'm like, we're looking at the same thing, but I'm not getting what you're getting. And then, you know, I become curious. I'm like, right, why are you getting what you're getting from the same thing I'm looking at and I'm not getting the same thing? And then, you know, it opens your mind a little bit, you know what I mean? It's not bad, it's interesting.
That's really good.
Right, I need water, mate.
Yeah, I was going to say, should we wrap it up? We've got 15 minutes left on
Can if you want, mate.
car.